Jeff Ogilvy survives wing foot.
Now the moment Aaron Baddeley has waited for.
Gary Webb is the 5-time Australian Open champion.
Golf at its best by one of the best in golf, Peter Thompson.
Standing in front of a crowd like this today and win the PGA Championship is pretty special.
He's done it at last. Greg Norman.
Matt Jones gets his name on the Stonehaven Cup.
Leash been to 11 under. Now we've got a new leader, kids.
There it is! Adam Scott. A life changer. Coming up next, you have unrestricted access to golf across Australia and the world. Thanks to Golf Australia, we're going inside the ropes.
G'day everybody, welcome to episode 9 of Inside the Ropes. Lovely to have you with us again. Andy Maher sitting alongside Mark Hayes, who is just looking resplendent. Very excited about something he wants to bring up right off the top of the show today. Hello, Hayesy.
Hello, Murray. This is one of the big issues in golf. It's a massive week of golf, and we've got the biggest issue possibly going around to lead us away.
Do you know what he's talking about, Al Whitaker?
I do, only because I know what his sordid mind would pay attention to on a week like this.
If there's ever a chance for him to talk about a man virtually naked, particularly one who is such a towering figure in Australian golf as is the man that you want to bring up, you will always get excited about such a prospect.
I just don't think the word towering is good when we're talking about Greg Norman strutting around the Colorado highlands without a stitch of clothing, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look like him, though, I'd never wear anything if I looked like him. Well, that's probably not true, but I wouldn't wear a lot.
Well, I think he's prone not to these days when there's a camera around. I love the shark, but I'm nearly lost for words here.
I'll admit, I've been having a chat with a couple of my tour mates, and one of them admitted to spending an inordinate amount of time looking at that picture. She's like, I was looking at it, but then I found myself still staring at it about 12 to 15 seconds later.
Did she tell you why?
I mean, he's cut. The man is ripped.
2 years old. And
those
he
lats, I mean, he's doing something right.
He can't wait to get his gear off, though. Like, we should explain for those who are unaware of what you're talking about. I mean, you've touched on the Colorado sort of highlands, but...
Yeah, well, he's on Instagram. He's been horseback riding through the Colorado highlands for 2 days. Things are getting a bit high, bit straining on the beak, Andy. So he's come across a little pond and decided to get the gear off and just refresh the crown jewels, and away he's gone.
He was clothed when he was on the horse.
I hope so.
Greg,
otherwise, we've got a whole different set of issues.
Yeah, well, massively so.
Yeah.
You don't have any idea the sorts of issues you would have if, with all due respect,
no, that's true.
You have no idea.
Happy not to.
Greg Godiva.
Yes,
Now you're lost for words.
I am, because it's about the 4th or 5th time in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Chopping wood at home, I just better show you what I look like. Getting some bamboo out of the backyard, I better show you what I look like. He just can't. He can't wait to show the world how magnificent he looks.
If you've got it,
why not flaunt it? We've got a huge show, obviously. The Open Championship, probably by the time you're listening to us, is underway, which is a magnificent thing.
Yeah, this is the real big ticket item of the weekend, and if arguably of the year. This is the one that everyone talks about and stops, and the coverage of it comes at a time for us when we can just sit back and kick it around for hours and hours on end. It's great.
I think the thing about the Open is, you have the US Open, you've got the Masters, and pop culture has kind of pushed everyone towards those majors as their favourites. But all of the golf nerds know that this is the week, because the golf course is constantly changing. Every year there's something new, and it sets up for different players. So, what more could you want from an event that has been? Well, it's come out of the home of golf in general.
And do you love the way it's covered? In Australia, and America, it's all about sort of quick cut coverage. Get as many shots in as you can. A lot of the stuff's off, kind of tape. It's just show as many shots as you can. There's a real upside to that, obviously, but there's something a bit more ponderous and slumbersome or slumber, whatever the right word is, to the Open coverage. You get the high, wide shots off the cherry picker, and you get the wind blowing that camera around, and you may not see a shot for a minute at a time, but I must say I love the way they cover their golf.
I think it's almost part of their strategy, whereas from a TV perspective, usually when you see a beauty shot or you see the birds running on the beach or whatever it is, it's because they've got no golf to show or that all of their cameras are in rotation. So there's actually no shot to take at that point in time.
Okay,
so they're not showing you for the sake of showing you those things. But I think as, the Open Championship, they're more, they're more likely to do so, especially, you think about, does anyone remember Peter Ellis talking about the rowers at St Andrews when they were out in the bay? Yeah. And he was just brilliant, and it was effortless for him. And I think for the most part, we think of British Opens and we think of how he feels those moments.
Absolutely.
And obviously not so much part of the coverage anymore, but I do think it's part of their strategy, yeah.
I know that a couple of times when I was at uni, Andy, we were having, I shouldn't say this in a family forum perhaps, but a couple of drinking games watching the old BBC coverage, and it was, if you heard the Firth of Clyde or the Firth of Forth or something like that mentioned, you had to, just have a little tipple, and a couple of people didn't make the afternoon tea times. Let's just say that.
There's a lot to get through on the show that is clearly Open Championship related, but gives us the opportunity right off the top and we're going to get our favourite couple of highlights from our watching experience on the way through, but gives the opportunity to catch up with somebody who came so close to his own share of Open immortality, stared at the reality that with 5 holes to play, he was on the verge of following some of the great Australian golf names, Thompson, Nagel, Norman and Baker Finch onto the Clarence Judd. We go back to 2009. It was Turnberry. And, of course, we're talking about Mat Goggin, who's been good enough to join us on Inside the Ropes. G'day, Matty. Thanks for your time, mate.
Morning.
When this time of the...
shudders there. I'm like having all these bad memories.
Right. Well, I wonder whether they are. I just wanted to ask you that. Are they... I mean, what sort of memories do come back to you at this time of the year when you get asked about 2009?
Yeah, I guess, a couple of things. Secondary is probably the Tom Watson part of it. For me personally, it was like after I kind of had my chance and then wasn't able to close out the last couple of holes, it was sort of standing there watching, being, so close to what would be another part of history with Watson winning it in his 60s, I guess, early 60s. And then just sort of feeding into the emotion of that and watching him change and watching everything around him change, like what was going on between him and his caddy and all these sort of little differences where you see when people are under extreme pressure, and sort of being a spectator to that and probably having sort of an insider view of what not everyone else could see or feel. But for me personally, I felt like I was playing really well, obviously. Middle of the back nine, I felt like I started to have control of my emotions and felt really comfortable. And I was hitting good quality shots and was really starting to feel confident. So to have the sort of the shot on the par 3, which I hit a great shot in, just go into that back trap and make a bogey, and then pull the shot on the next was like, pretty bitter at the time. But overall it was like I always felt like a very positive experience because you always think you're going to have more opportunities like that.
That was the thing I was going to ask you. We have this high rotation over here at the moment, Matt, of, past Open championships and chronicles of champion golfers, and yours was on a couple of days ago. And, with those, I don't know what number it was, maybe with 6 holes left to play, you were right there. Like it was, you're as good as any player left on the course, with a chance of winning that thing. And you talk about controlling your emotions and keeping them under check. Did you ever, at any stage on that back nine, allow that thought to get into your mind of, geez, I could win this thing?
Well, no, you sort of get into that feeling of I'm in control, as in I'm hitting good shots, I'm seeing my targets, everything about this feels comfortable and I don't feel overwhelmed, or the moment doesn't feel too big, and you're completely within yourself. And it was kind of weird after I hit a bad tee shot off 17 and, copped a bad lie-up in that left rough where it's kind of a 50-50 where you can go for the green, so I lay it up. And it was right then, it's just like all the emotion came out of me, is like, I'm not going to win. And then you just become a spectator to what else is going on. And that's when it sort of turned over to watching Tom. But no, I felt really comfortable. And sometimes you surprise yourself because, like, all morning you're super nervous. You can't feel anything for the first few holes. I mean, you're kidding yourself if you think you're in control then. But as the day progressed, I started to get more and more comfortable and started to hit the shots I wanted to hit. And I hit, I think, a good shot into 13 and had a good putt at 30. And then, I hit a good shot into 14 and came up a little short. And and hit a cracking shot into the par 3, and they're all like, there was no, I didn't feel like I was choking, if you know what I mean. Like you know when you're choking, and I felt comfortable. So that was sort of when I look back, I felt like, well, I felt comfortable. At the moment, didn't feel too big. Just things didn't really go my way. I mean, there are other times where, like, no, you felt uncomfortable, you couldn't control yourself, and you were choking, and we all do it. I mean, you know, I don't know whether Johnny Miller made that line, everybody chokes, it's just sort of chokes the least wins, and that's sort of invariably what happens, but I felt pretty comfortable.
I couldn't control myself in the chook run last Sunday afternoon, Matty, so I know what you're talking about.
It's the same thing, though. It's like being nervous is the same.
Yeah, I suppose.
When you get nervous, it's the same as when I get nervous. It's no different. It's just that, honestly, when you're teeing off in that situation, it's like you can't feel or control anything you do for, 30, 40, an hour, and it just sort of goes by, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, no, this is just golf, and I feel normal again.
Wow.
And so if you can get through that first hour or whatever it is, you hope it goes away. But if you can get through that and get comfortable and just play your normal round of golf, that's the guys that are at the pointy end of the end of the day.
Matty, I think one of the things that everyone talks about in those situations is learning how to play golf uncomfortably, and you've just mentioned that. But it's something that I don't know, that people realise that it's really a part of the pro game, as well as those guys going for their, like Hayesy said, for their own little club championship and that kind of thing. What did you learn about yourself on the stretch between 14 and 16? Because sometimes, when things aren't going your way, that's just as priceless in terms of experience.
Yeah, I think there's a technical, like, everyone has talent. Everyone's really good. You're talking about the best golfers in the world. So, I mean, you can't say someone's more or less talented. Everyone has awesome talent. And, we all practice our routines and our rituals, and the reason we do that is so when you can't feel your hands, or you don't know what you're doing, or you're completely having an out-of-body experience, the routine takes over. And when you're really nervous, it's just having a good enough technique, because, like, if you're leading a tournament, you're not having any negative thoughts. You're not like, thinking, I'm going to hit a terrible shot. You're only seeing good thoughts. But it's when you're a little faster than normal, it's having a good enough technique where you kind of play well in spite of yourself, and then you relax. And I think that's what, you can always tell guys for the first time when they're up there, and it's just like you almost expect through 6 holes this guy's going to be out of the tournament. He's never been here, he's never been through this, he hasn't experienced it, and you almost have to do it to know that, okay, it's just golf, and it's just having that confidence in your technique and your routines and your rituals to where you play well in spite of yourself. And then you almost get confident from it. It's just like, okay, I can do this no matter what. And then you're a little bit calmer, and you're a little bit slower, and those sort of, the mind doesn't race, and all those sort of things that add to poor performance under pressure. And it's the same in all sports, I think.
Matt, one guy who probably doesn't need too much, more self-confidence in a situation like that through experience is Tom Watson. You've mentioned him a couple of times. Talk to us about watching him from your perspective, but also what he managed to do on the 72nd hole. It deprived a lot of people of folklore, really. I'd love your opinion on what happened to him.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because early in the day we're just kind of playing around the golf by about 7 or 8 holes. I mean, we're just chatting. It just felt like just another round of golf. And early on, the first few holes was a really heavy cross breeze. And I was relatively good, one of the best drivers of the golf ball, and I'd be hitting my tee shots in the wind, and I'd be starting at 40, 50 yards off, or meters right of the target, just to have them bring back in. And he'd start one down the middle of the fairway, and you'd be thinking, oh, that's gone in the left, crap, that's no good. And it would just, no spin, knuckleball, straight down the middle. And his ball was not affected by side wind. So very early you thought, like, okay, I can see why this guy's won so many British Opens. He just has total control over the ball and doesn't spin it too much. It's like everything's built around, playing in the strong wind. Coming up the 8th tee, I hit a cracking drive down there. I'm not overly long, but I'm not short either. I'm in sort of, average to long on tour. We're sort of having a conversation about what his schedule was like. And he's like, I only play 2, flat belly tournaments, as he called them. I play the Masters. But that's purely purely ceremonial for me. I can't hit it far enough, right? And then I get up there and I hit a perfect drive, and he's probably 6 or 7 paces behind me, and I kind of turn to him and say, well, yeah, you don't hit it far enough. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm past 70% of the guys out here, so you're pretty much, you know, you're fine as far as I was concerned.
Did you look at your belly when he said that?
He was... Actually, then I probably had a relatively flat belly. I think now it's kind of... I'm heading the other way. But as it was interesting as the pressure grew, and almost like by 16, my tournament was I was kind of out of it. And I just started to notice where he was starting to get a little more irritated with his caddy. Sort of, you know, his caddy kind of moved when I was hitting my shot in 17, and he was obviously not wanting him to, you know, put me off, but really sort of jumped on him. The same thing on the 18th tee shot, where you could tell it wasn't quite as relaxed. And, I mean, how could you be, right? And, I mean, 18, he hit a rescue off the tee, one of his Adams. I think he was all playing Adams at the time. I remember thinking on the tee shot, I was like, what are you doing? Like, you got a one-shot lead at the British Open. It's literally a 5-iron and a 7-iron. And the only problem is off the tee is the gore's down the right or the bunker on the left, which you basically can't get it on the green on. So he took out a club that could hit it in the bunker on the left. I mean, I think I hit a 5-iron and a 7-iron. It would have been a 4-iron and a 7-iron for him, probably straight down Brett. Anyway, and he hits this perfect tee shot. And I remember turning to my caddy and thinking, and saying to Brian at the time, I was like, I can't believe we're just going to see this. I mean, this is crazy. Like, this is done. I mean, that's, you know, you're not going to make 5 from the middle of the fairway with kind of a 9-iron down Brett. But, you know, the no spinning of the ball, I guess, transferred into hitting a, you know, really nice 9-iron in, landed kind of perfect for, you know, a regular tour player. I guess he just doesn't quite compress the ball as much, obviously doesn't spin it as much, and then it just went over the green. And it was funny. It was almost like as soon as it went through the green, you could see the whole energy get sucked out of the moment. And you see it in sports. It's like in cricket where, you know, you're chasing a low total. There's a couple of early wickets, and then everyone's panicking. You know what I mean? The players walking out, they can feel it in the ground. They can feel it in the crowd. And it was like there was this sort of moment of, oh no. And I really feel like that. He sensed that. Everyone sensed that. And he had a pretty simple chip back into the breeze. And on the 17th hole before, he, instead of chipping, decided to putt it. And he kind of wiggled it down there and made birdie. And I honestly think that was, if he had chipped the one before or had a little bit more confidence in his chipping, it was a very simple chip up and over a hill, back into the breeze. That British Open was rare in the fact that the grass, the collar of the grass was almost like American. It was like green and lush and perfect to chip off. It wasn't kind of that tight, kind of nervy stuff you get over there where it's very difficult to chip off. He had the wind in his favour, so if he catches a little spin, the ball's going to spin. You just have to land it on the downslope, run it down, and when he putted it by, there was no chance he was making that putt. You could just tell it in body language, the feeling of the crowd, and all that sort of stuff. It was done, and the rest is history.
Gosh, it's actually a bit physically painful listening to Matty explain it from a first-hand position. Oh, that's horrible.
And then that kept carrying on to Matt, didn't it, into the playoff on 5, 6, 17, and 18.
Yeah, I mean, he was never going to win the playoff. Like he was just. Yeah, I mean, it was done. And it's funny, you see it all the time, really. You know, like they talk about momentum in sports, and you have, like, the statistician guys in football and everyone claiming there is no momentum in sport. But if you've actually stood on the ground or played the sport, there is momentum. Absolutely. And I don't know whether we can quantify it, but there is definitely an energy or something else that is going on that brings you to that moment of ultimate confidence, or the other side of the coin where you shrink when you've just played 71 of the greatest holes of your life.
Yeah, I remember having a chat with Kari Webb about this. We got cornered by this bloke that was writing a book at one of the player parties a couple of years back, and he said, "Why were you so good?" And she said, "I got good breaks at the right times." And that's coming from Australia's best golfer, female golfer at least. So, you know, there is that, you know, you talk about quantifying it, and there is something tangible in golf where you get a good break, you get a bounce that kicks over a bunker that completely changes your tournament.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing, as you said, you can't measure.
Yeah, and there's a great book, Fooled by Randomness, by Nassim Taleb, which basically talks about this, how people are fooled by the fact that random events, they attribute, all their, brilliance is why everything went well for them, as opposed to those sort of sliding door moments, that one bounce, putt slipping in, lipping out, all those sorts of things. The key is the really great players is they've got that putt more than once in their life. They have it 10, 20, 30, 40 times, and they're lucky enough to make the ones to be truly the greats of the game. And for the rest of us, it can just be the matter of that one moment. And we have plenty of guys who've won one major or won one tournament or one or two tournaments in their careers, and it's not that they weren't good enough.
So, apropos of that, and last one from me, Matt, do you feel, you've got a great understanding and grasp on, this game. When you look back at 2009, do you feel like a bit of that happened to you? That, you hit that great shot on the par 3 and, the shot in the air, I don't know whether the shot in the air on 16, whether it did look a chance of getting over that bunker to you, but, it looked like it was on a reasonable line from where we were watching on the tally.
On 14, yeah.
On 14, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because, I go over that in my head all the time. On 14, the day before, pin was back, and I remember I hit a 3-iron in, and I thought it was, long, just long, and long is dead. And I've hit it, and I'm like, as soon as I've hit it, oh no, I've just ripped that. And it just stuck on the back of the green. And it was that front pin, and I was in between 3 and 4-iron, and the day before, it's like, well, it played shorter. Played longer. I thought my 3-iron was well gone, but I just couldn't bring myself to hit it. No, I'll trap squeeze a 4 in there, and I hit it, and then the wind got it, and you're just like, you're almost instantly there thinking, no, I should have hit 3. And then the par 3 was just, it was funny enough, I saw Lee Westwood in the same bunker.
It was exactly the same shot. You guys hit it. You must have pitched the ball in each other. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hit my shot in there, and it's like one of those things absolutely pure that. I couldn't have hit that any better, and it's going to be a bummer because it's going to go on. It's like you think it's perfect, and then it's going to go, and then it just goes in that trap, and you're wiggling your feet in the trap, and you're getting ready, and the sand was so thick and heavy, and I hit the shot, and there is no sand there. And then I instantly thought, well, okay, that's how Lee Westwood hit the bunker shot at the front of the green. Because you're in that trap thinking, I can make this. This is like one of those really nice little short bunker shots you get on a links golf where, it's really, you feel really comfortable on them. But up against that face, all the sand has been blown out. So, then you go in and watch the coverage, or you see Lee Westwood making the same comment. You're like, well, you're just never going to know that. You know that you hit the shot differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Just changing tact a little bit, Matt, about, just wanted to ask you, we're headed to Royal Birkdale, which, it is the site of the highest scoring Open inside this millennium back in 2008. What's it like playing in an Open when you know that, 3 over par might walk away winning it? Like, how do you, when you're used to playing courses where you make so many birdies, how do you get in the mind frame where you are okay making bogeys every now and then?
So I think the whole field, no one actually knows. You tee off it might be a rough day, and at some point during the round, you're just like, this is impossible. How are we going to get around? And you're 5 over, and you think you're out of the tournament. But it's a matter of just hanging in there, and you get to the end of the day, and you shoot your 4 over, and you're looking like, I can even pass winning. I'm not too far behind it. It's different when there's, it can be demoralising when there's that, I played at St Andrews one year. The guys in the morning shoot 7 under. We're out in the afternoon, no one's breaking 75. You're thinking, well, this tournament's done. And that's really difficult to deal with. But I guess when it's really brutal, you kind of start to appreciate the pars. And I enjoy it, actually. I prefer tournaments like that. But the difficult thing is when you get off to a bad start and really convincing yourself that this is okay. It's like, it's okay that I've turned 5 over. A couple of downwind par 5s coming in, like a lot of those courses generally go out and back, and it can be impossible for 9 holes and playable for the other 9 holes. It's just keeping yourself in the mind frame that you're never out of it. And that's why a lot of the times you see the experienced guys kind of rise to the cream rises to the top in those sorts of weeks, because it's very easy to get despondent when you're 5 over after 9 holes and, someone's already shot 3 under and there's another guy, the morning scores are decent without realising that by the end of the week, if you can hang around, you're going to have an opportunity.
Matt, you're regarded as a great thinker of the game, and you love the history of the game, and a great orator, obviously. The big issue this week, what do you think of Greg Norman naked in the Colorado Lake?
Well, I've managed to miss that. So I honestly have no idea. I think someone posted something, Jeff Shackelford might have made a joke, or no, maybe it was Dan Jenkins. I think it was, the great Dan Jenkins made some quote on his Twitter feed. I just kind of laughed, so I've actually managed to avoid it. So you're going to have to fill me in.
It's actually on Hazy's screensaver on his phone.
I'd keep off Instagram if I was you.
I'm sure he can show you.
Don't look at it.
Some things you need to see, and some things you don't. You know what? You'll get it inadvertently somewhere along the way. Someone is going to show you this photo, and once you've seen it, you'll never unsee it.
You need to see it?
Yeah, right. You don't need to, but you will. You've probably seen Greg Norman naked anyway. You probably don't need to see the photo, but for the rest of us, it was a bit enlightening. Hey, mate, thanks so much for coming back. Australians have got such a, they stick their nose in the frame so often at this championship, and we're hoping the same thing's going to be happening tonight, our time, as we speak to you right now. You were right there, and you had an experience that 99.9% of us only dream of ever having, and you didn't do much wrong, mate. Anybody who goes back and watches that will see that you hit a lot of good shots, and those breaks that Ali was talking about before, mate, you just didn't get them when you needed them. Thanks for coming on the show and having a chat about it with us.
Yeah, thanks. No worries. Thanks for having me.
Good
Thanks,
on you.
Matt.
Matt Goggin, remembering his time in the sun, and it was so close to having the great dream realised.
Isn't that unbelievable, listening to Matt talk about Tom Watson playing the 72nd hole of the Open Championship? That's just gut-wrenching. You're feeling every shot there. It's extraordinary to think that a guy who's won so many major titles, 5 Opens, been there and done it all, can just tense up like that. It's extraordinary. Absolutely, that was extraordinary.
We'll never know, will we? But at the start of your career, you're hungry and desperate, and you want to win. And you want to win. If you're a good player, you want to win your first major, and that brings with it a whole separate, unique, individual kind of mindset. And at the other end of the scale, when you think your time's done and you're into your 60s, and life presents you with this other opportunity all over again, what pressures must... Because for 3.5 rounds, Tom Watson's probably just having a walk in the park. How good's this? I'm playing okay. Then the reality dawns, geez, I can win this. And all of those little, pressure picadillos that are part of his, makeup that hadn't been there, by and large, for 3.5 rounds, they resurface. And then a guy like Matty gets to see that firsthand with one of the giants of the game. It was hard to watch from the other side of the world. Yeah,
it was pretty incredible though, because he launched himself straight into it with that 60 open round 65. I think he was one off the lead at that point in time, so it was kind of straight into the gauntlet out of the gates. And then everyone was kind of looking at him, going, "Is he going to hold it together?" And I know we'll reflect on some opens during our podcast and show today, where we talk about potentially some of the people that didn't hold it together. But I think that is one of the factors of British Open golf in particular, as opposed to US Opens, that it forces people to make bad decisions. I genuinely think that under the pump, a British Open, an open course, is harder to tackle mentally, because it draws you into these lulls, this false sense of security in a lot of ways, where it doesn't look that daunting, and you go, yeah, I can hit 3-wood here, I'm comfortable, and then you get up and you're in the bunker, or drive. Exactly. So there have been so many cases, and more so I think than any other major championship where that's happened.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
I was listening to Rory. Rory comes into this tournament off a horrible run of form, 3 missed cuts out of his last 4 tournaments. And I was going back, having a listening to some of his thoughts on the conditions that are dealt to the players at Open Championships. And he's admitted, it doesn't suit his game. He's a high ball hitter, and his game is probably better suited to American-type courses. And he doesn't like it. I don't like playing in bad weather golf. I don't like it. And that's not exactly in just what you're talking about, Ali, but it's kind of part of it. You get these winds and you get the sideways rain and all the stuff that you get because it's a links course that you don't get a lot of inland course in America. You get at this tournament. And if that's your mindset going in, then you're kind of half beaten before you stand on the first tee.
If you hit a bad shot on the 71st or the 72nd at Augusta, you've got to punch out through the trees or you've got to hit it off pine straw. That's really the only thing you've got. Bogey's still on the cards. If you hit a bad one at Troon or Turnberry or anywhere there, Muirfield in particular probably, knee-high grass and you may not move the ball. You may not move the ball, and the bunkers are penal. So Ali's 100% right. It's a good point, Ali. It presents a whole heap of additional troubles under the pump.
G'day, I'm My Golf Ambassador Jason Day. I'm really excited to be an ambassador for My Golf, Australian Golf's national junior program, jointly run by Golf Australia and the PGA. My Golf is every Aussie kid's first step on their golfing pathway. It's all about teaching children the basic skills of golf in a safe and healthy environment, and just as importantly, about the life skills that golf can teach you that distinguish our sport from the rest. Remember to visit mygolf.org.au for more information.
G'day, I'm Cameron Smith. I'm not at home as often as I'd like, but I can keep up with all the Australian golf on Inside the Ropes.
Time now to turn our attention to the 146th playing of the Open Championship. Before we do, though, just a reminder to subscribe to Inside the Ropes through a variety of forums these days. Apple Podcasts, Android users download the podcast app through Google Play, have the show delivered to your device every single Thursday. There is a new way of accessing the show. This is the modern age of technology. I was reading all week about Pandora leaving us, which is a devastation to me. But you can actually get Inside the Ropes through Spotify.
Amazing.
All these things.
Are weddings, parties, anything on Spotify?
That delivers music as well as podcasts, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? My word, they are, Hayesy. Don't worry about that.
That's good.
They were on Pandora as well. But it's gone.
Almost every tour player has Spotify, I can tell you that much, and they crank it on in the houses and stuff, and we all rent. Someone always pulls out their phone Spotify, so I'm just going to chuck some of our podcasts in the mix and see if they turn it off.
How many of the modern day tour players on the various women's tours around the world are listening to Mick Thomas and Weddings, Parties, Anything?
Can tell you.
Did that sound like Japanese to you? What
Yep.
I just said? Yep,
I
right.
didn't understand a word of it.
No problems. If you're a Spotify user, head to the search tool and plug in Inside the Ropes, and you can keep up to date with all the episodes via Spotify. You can leave a review if you wish. Famulator. Have you got Famulator's review in front of you?
I have, yeah. It was lovely.
5-star review from Famulator.
Thanks, guys. Terrific podcast for keeping up to date with world golf and hearing about golf's personalities.
Are you actually Famulator?
Well, you've tricked me there.
You're Famulator, aren't you?
He created the account 2 weeks ago.
Right. You can leave a review, Apple Podcasts, iTunes. That's what we used to call it back in the olden days. They're very important to us, the reviews, because they make it easier for people to find the podcast. Okay. Here we go. We're all going to lose some sleep over the next, various 3 or 4 days whenever you're tuning into this show for the first time. What do we know about? We know enough about Birkdale, don't we now? We know what it is. It's a course where whenever there's a tournament at Royal Birkdale, Australians, by and large, are there at the end of the tournament.
Yeah, and we had a great insight into it from Ian Baker-Finch last week, and I think I did a piece on golf.org.au this week about Australia's not only successes with ultimately lifting the Claret Jug with Tomo and IBF, but also the range of players who have actually finished on the podium, for want of a bit of a phrase. We've gone right back to, we had a silver medalist as leading amateur back in 1954 when Tomo won, and it goes right through. And some names you've forgotten: Vaughan Summers, Graham Marsh, all sorts of guys who have been there. As you said before, Andy, when we were talking about Goggin, Australians have got a really happy knack of putting their nose in the frame at Opens, and in particular at Royal Birkdale. We've got 11 of them going around, Ali.
Yeah, well, you remember 2008, Greg Norman broke the record for being the oldest ever 54-hole leader.
True.
So, yeah, we've obviously got some serious affinity out at Royal Birkdale. Fabulous.
And one good thing here, we all know the guys who've been around the traps for a while have, played most of the Open Rotary, if not all of it by now, referring to Scott, Leishman, Day, etc. But one of the beauties of the young guys and girls coming through now is they all get to go and play a UK tour at some point if they're lucky enough and good enough to go and do it. So people like Ryan McCarthy, who as a name not familiar to too many, although you're very familiar if you've been listening to the podcast, Andy.
Unbelievable story a couple of weeks ago you did with him. Yep.
He's very familiar with all these areas. He's played in several of the West Coast English links, up on the Scottish links that are prone to the same weather. So, even these guys who we don't know and think are inexperienced, they've actually had a real taste of what they've got ahead of them for the next 4 days. So if they can hold their head above water for the first couple, I'm pretty confident that we'll see a really big showing on the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to say that Royal Birkdale, as a general rule, plays into the hands of the ball strikers in terms of consistent ball strikers, more so than the really flashy ones. You need to hit a lot of fairways, you need to stay out of those fairway bunkers, and you need to hit greens. And I think, players like Hideki will play well on a golf course like this. In theory, Jordan Spieth, if he can get his driver to agree with him, so there's those are the players that I'm going to be looking more towards as opposed to kind of the Dustin Johnsons on this layout.
2 words, Podrick Harrington.
Well, of course, yeah.
That's exactly, you've just described the way he plays. And he flushed 3 woods and they win him the tournament.
The Matsuyama, Koepka, Fleetwood group, if you're looking at the groupings to look out for days 1 and 2, that's as appealing, outside of the groups that have got the Australians in there, that's as appealing a 3-ball as you're going to see in the first 2 days.
Yeah, especially with Tommy being a local boy as well, so those crowds are going to be rip-roaring. They're going to be the place to be in, day 1, day 2.
Do you want to talk about who the Australians are going around with?
Yeah, we will. So depending again when you're listening to this, of course, we hope that it'll be out early to mid-afternoon on Thursday. But so we'll just talk about the first round tee times. 11 guys going out from the Australian perspective. Adam Bland's the first one to reach the first tee at 8:47. This is Australian Eastern Standard Time. He's playing with a couple of guys you might have heard of. Connor Syme, who was Australian Amateur Champion a couple of years ago, and a bloke called John Daly.
John Daly. That'll be interesting.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
And one of our favourites, Matt Griffin's next out of the blocks at 9:09 rather, Australian Eastern Time, with Austin Connolly and Matthew Southgate. A bit of a lesser known group there, but that's probably going to suit Matt pretty well. Cam Smith at 9:20, playing alongside Bill Haas and Callum Shinkwin,
who we'll talk about later on in the show if we get time. A remarkable conclusion to the Scottish Open last week.
It really was.
Oh, God.
The next out is Aaron Baddeley at 9:53, and he's in a ripping group, and it's probably befitting what he's done previously. May not get the same respect in the States, but he has here with a draw Tyrrell Hatton and Martin Keimer, and they're going out at 9:53. So that's a great group for Bads. If one of those guys can get on a roll, he's the sort of guy that can hop on board and really charge along with him. Our first big gun, I suppose, for want of a better word, Jason Day goes out with Zach Johnston and Sergio Garcia at 10:04. That's just a ripping group, and that'll be heavily featured on television, no doubt, as will the next one. And this, Adam Scott, Ricky Fowler, and Paul Casey at 10:26. Ryan Fox, although a Kiwi, we sort of adopt him as one of our own. So I'm going to slide him in here at 10:37. Then there's quite a gap after that. Mark Leishman's been also given a really handy dose of respect too. He's playing with Phil Mickelson and Francesco Molinari, who they naturally love as a European player, a Ryder Cupper, and they're out at just after midnight at 12:10. Scott Hend, Rafael Cabrera-Bello, Bubba Watson at 12:21. More good respect for an Aussie there.
Is it wrong for me to hope that Scotty Hend at some stage just punches Bubba Watson in the head? Is that wrong for me to? Am I allowed to say that on a Golf Australia podcast or not?
+1. I mean, I didn't say that either. Sorry.
I plead the fifth.
We love Andy.
Of course, we do. No doubt about that.
Yeah, he speaks his mind like very few others. Andrew Dote, such a strong performance in the Scottish Open. He's been given his first major championship start as a result. He goes up with an American sort of prodigy coming through here, and I really hope that I didn't have to pronounce his name this early in the podcast.
I'm glad you've got this.
But I want to say Xander Souffle, but I'm going to have to say Schauffele. I'm not really sure. Sorry, Xander. I know that it's poor form. I really should have been more up on it than that. But along with Xander and Ji-Wan Kim at 12:43. Ash Hall, Nick McCarthy and Joe Kruger off at 1:05 a.m. And if you're looking for the toothpicks and you want to go that extra mile, Ryan McCarthy, Laurie Cantor and Sebastian Munoz at 1:16 a.m.
Munoz, I think,
Munoz.
but
sorry.
Of course can't help you out on Xander.
Thanks for your support, guys. I really appreciate that.
Before we get to our two favourite moments each of Open history, Did you say that you've got a couple of bits and pieces we need to know about Royal Birkdale?
Yeah, well, I just thought it was interesting. I looked at it historically in terms of, how a golf course like that doesn't actually have any extra room, how do they adapt for the modern golfer? So it was a question, naturally you ask yourself at 7:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and I answered it. So
you might need to get out a bit more.
I think I do. So in 1961... the course was about 6,250 metres long, par 72. Then they cranked it up for the next two opens to a 73, but added 200 metres. So it was about 6,400 metres and change. And since then, progressively, they've tacked a shot off par each time they have the open. So 72 in 1976, 83 it was par 71. But the length has been quite similar, because they've got no more to give there in terms of their layout. So now it's down to par 70 for the last three attempts since 1991 and 98 as well. The cut in 98 was +9.
Wow.
Actually, sorry, no, that was actually in 2008, which is even more staggering. So, but yeah, it's just under 6,600 yards, par 70. So you can see, that they've tried to adapt as much as possible, but essentially it's a golf course that is completely at odds with the weather. You're going to go low if the weather's fine. You're going to struggle if the weather's horrible. I think we've seen that in previous opens there as well, but, rumour is the greens are a little bit slower than the majority of open courses as well. So that plays into the hands of the guys that aren't as good putters, in my opinion, and it will help the ball strikers get close to the hole. So that's my little tidbit.
Good. And one more thing on that, Andy. It's course, most of the open rotors sort of tend to go out and back. And this one is a bit like Muirfield, I want to say, from memory. That's actually a roundabout sort of thing. So you'd very rarely get two holes that play either up or back. Normally, if you're going out and back, you might have it into and then against, into and then with, I should say. But this one could be off the left on the one hole, could be downhill the next, down breeze, could be directly into and off on the right the next one. It just rotates around. There's only probably, I want to say 16, 17 and 18 that play in the same directions or the direct opposite direction of what the hole was previously. So... don't expect to see. You'll need a full range of shots in your bag. You can't just bank on it being downhill or down breeze or always from the left or always from the right. It's going to be everywhere. Yeah, well, the 15 to 18 from memory. Last time I was there was actually in 2014 for the Ladies British Open, and one of my best friends on tour actually won that year, Mo Martin. So I've got a lot of fond memories out on that golf course watching her play, but. There is that. If you turn it on the golf for nothing, apart from 15, 16, 17, 18, there's two par fives in the last four holes. Everybody, I think, remembers Padraig Harrington's shot into 17. I think that might be coming up in one of our greatest moments, potentially. I'm going to throw that out there, that one of us surely has, that shot to 6 feet on 17. Well, even if we haven't, we're glad that you put it in there, because it was, as much as we wanted the other bloke to win it, the man who likes getting around without clothes on, if he's going to get beaten by anybody, it may as well be Harrington. And he got beaten as well. That was the difference. He really did. And there is going to be some weather around. Yeah, for what it's worth, you check the forecast. It does sound like the wind's going to be a factor. And it does sound like there's going to be rain at various stages, so it's a bit of a... Hard to believe that in the UK. Funny about that. It's summer, right? So Ash Hall's about to join us. I know you've caught up with him, and he's going out with Kruger and McCarthy, as you told us, Hayesy. So we'll get to Ash in a moment. But I just wanted to... It sounds like this year sort of cast your mind back a little bit, and I thought let's tap into each other's memories and just get your two favourite moments from or events from Open Championship history. So, Elle, you go first. Give us your first one to begin with. My first one was actually 2010, and it was Rory McIlroy's opening round. Usually, I think it's so easy for us to think of the wins and the losses, but I remember watching his opening round, and he shot 9 under par 63. It was a course record at St Andrews, and I remember watching that thinking how incredible that moment must be to do that, especially at St Andrews. Not that I don't pay credit to any other open venue by any means, but there's something, and this is going to sound super naff, but there's something spiritual about St Andrews. When I went there for the first time, it was like
you pay homage to the game that had shaped me as a person. I've learnt so many lessons through golf, and you go there, and I had such a connection with the place, and I'd never stepped foot there before. And even just having the buildings around, the incredible finish. If you feel like you're finishing in the middle of London almost with the framing of it, but then. Watching him, I learnt something as well from his second round where he went from bogey-free 63 to a birdie-free 80 the next day. And it was just, it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, this happens on the biggest stage in golf, but just seeing the contrast between the 2 days is just what golf's all about, really, isn't it?
Perfect, of course, absolutely. You go with your first one, Hayesy.
I feel a bit sort of sheepish to bring up something that's so new and so fresh in our minds, but I struggle to go past last year. Normally with these sort of retro things, Andy, you'd look for something that had a bit of fine wine style sort of aging about it. But no,
it's hard to go past it, to be honest.
I just sat there last year, and Stenson's, I'm sure he's a nice bloke, but he's, essentially a sort of a coldish character. Mickelson, I have got no affinity with whatsoever. I didn't leave the chair.
No,
I thought when Stenson bogeyed the first hole, I thought we're going to have some issues here. It's going to be a Mickelson procession, and that's not going to be good. Blow me down. I mean, he's gone. This is Stenson's round, or the parts of it anyhow. He started with a bogey. He's gone birdie, 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 par, birdie, par, birdie, par, birdie. I mean,
it goes all right.
Final round 63.
That's the last round of an Open Championship. And then when Mickelson was gathering himself and throwing down everything he could possibly chuck at him in the last 5 or 6 holes after they'd gone through the sort of, the tension of the turn down near the railway line there, he's closed with birdie, 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 par, birdie. I don't think there's been a better round. We've all talked about 63s in major championships, and we gushed about Justin Thomas's one at Erin Hills a few weeks ago. It's all well, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I've shot, I could only dream of shooting a 63 clearly, but to do it in round 1, 2 or 3 is one thing. To do it when you're having one of the world's greatest ever golfers chuck the heat at you, throw the kitchen sink at you in the final round of an Open Championship with wind coming from everywhere. I get a goosebump thinking about how well Stenson hit that ball.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, especially coming off 2013 as well, where Phil walked away with the win and Stenson was second.
That's right.
Where was that? At Muirfield, I think. So, having that history and having the duel go, don't we all wish that, whenever you have two guys going head to head, that you get to see the rematch? Like we talk about it in boxing and all of these other sports, in tennis, and you so seldom get to have it, especially in a major.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, added an extra element to last year.
And I don't want to preempt my second one too much, but I'm about to give it away, that the margin between second, who's Mickelson, and third, which I think was JB Holmes from memory, was 11 shots.
I know where you're going. Well, you are cracking the aged fine wine with the second one then.
I am. Do you want me to push on?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because if I refer to this one now, my second one that I was too young, but there's been so many films made of it and stories written about it, I feel like I was there, is the 1977 Duel in the Sun. And that's Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus. And before I rant about that one, Nicklaus, in referring to 2016, said that was better than what those guys did, Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus, who effectively did the same thing. So the guys were level. They shot the same scores in the first 3 rounds, Ali.
That was at Turnberry as well, wasn't it?
It was at Turnberry. And so I just called that one up, just the scores and stuff. They were neck and neck the whole way. These are two of the greatest golfers, again, of all time, going at each other. And they came to the last round only a couple of shots clear of the rest of the field. But by the end of the whole shooting match, again, they were that far in front of the field, it was just ridiculous. So they've ended up...
I reckon Nicklaus was 10 clear of third.
Of Green in third, that's right.
It's 10 clear.
And that's amazing. Hubert Green, Lee Trevino, some great players.
But what about what happened on 18? Well, I mean, what happened on 18 is, it's impossible to believe that, I mean, you can't make that stuff up.
No.
But it happened.
It was unbelievable. And so Watson had actually spotted Nicklaus 3-shot lead a couple of times during the round and as late as middle of the back 9, and he's charged home and he's had it on toast. He's hit a classic second shot into the 18th green, the 72nd, and Nicholas is nowhere. I think he was in the rough from memory.
He was in deep gauze. He was in a horrible position.
And it's over because Watson's got the one shot lead, and you think, what a duel we've seen here for 71 holes. It would have been nice to see it go up the last, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen. And then Jack plays, a stunning shot. The man of his power could probably only play. Then rolls in the beast of a putt, and suddenly a 2-footer for Tom Watson looks like he's putting it into a mouse's ear. And sure enough, as opposed to 2009, he actually had the wherewithal to just can that pretty directly. So a one-shot win again, a massive margin to third, and one of the great duels, hence the name Duel in the Sun.
Yeah.
They're the two favourite ones for me. I love to see two guys or girls, whatever, at the top of their game, head to head. That's what gets me going.
Norman's in both of mine before you get your last one, Ali, and we're keen for you to finish it. 89, I was lucky enough to be at Troon for the whole 6 or 7 days. I've got the week pass, just camped down in a backpackers joint in Ayr and went every day and loved it. And Norman's out of contention in the last round. He can't win it. I can't remember. I tried to find out the tee times online, but I couldn't find out how early he went out in compared to the last group, which was Grades and Tom Watson in the last group. And me and my mates we were going to follow Grady around all day and get to see Tommy as well. So Norman, my recollection is that he's gone out about 3.5 hours before Grady steps onto the first tee. And I reckon he's probably 8 shots off the pace. And we get to the first tee. Let's go and follow Norman until Grady plays. And there would have been 100 people on the first tee at Troon, that par forward along the coast. The first couple are along the beachfront. He started his round with six birdies, 6 straight birdies to open the round. And as every hole, we followed every shot of it. And as every hole, progressed, the gallery swelled to the point that, I kid you not, by the time we got to 6, there would have been, I'm going to say there were 5,000 people around the green. I mean, it was just, people were coming from everywhere. You could see them sort of running across
Swarming.
They were, just because word had got out that Norman's charging. And I remember on the third hole, I get goosebumps remembering this. When I got home, and I hate the fact that I did this, but where I was on the side of 3 green, I couldn't see the hole. So Norman must have been a 60-footer for birdie on 3. So I just watched Norman. I couldn't track the ball towards the hole, so I had no idea, once he'd putted the ball, whether it was on line or not. So I just watched Norman, and he held the putting pose for about probably the first third of the ball's journey. Then he raised the putter and took a stride after the ball, and I yelled out, "Get in!" And you can hear if you watch the broadcast,
you're that person.
You can hear my voice. You hear this idiot go, "Get in!" I didn't say get in the hole. I just said get in because I saw Norman. And when I got home, all these blokes were going, "Were you following Norman?" I said, "Yeah." "You were the one." I said, "Yeah, it was." And of course he fired the ball in. He strode after it and he fired it in. And then it was just the most electrifying thing that I've ever arguably seen. Except for Anthony Koutafiti's last quarter in the 99 preliminary final. It's the most exhilarating, electrifying thing I think I've ever seen in the world of sport. As it turned out, it was painful because we know what happened thereafter. Kelkovecchia wins it, beats 2 of ours in the playoff, which was horrible. But then 93, the Feldo-Norman relationship, the scales are so obviously skewed Feldo's way historically between the two of them that what happened in 93, as bad as a shirt that Norman wore, and he had that shocking black vest.
At least he was wearing a shirt.
Multicoloured shark on the back. I mean, if he had his time over again, like Stuart Sink, who had the green hat and the green shoe, if he knew he was going to win the Open, there's no way he dresses like that.
I always feel as though it's a bad omen if you dress like you're going to win, though. If you've seen how many guys dress as though they're going to wear a green jacket,
very good point.
And you can tell that they've thought about what colours they're going to wear, and then they lose.
It's a very good
point. It's the curse of being well dressed. You've got to. I think the worse you dress, the better. Actually, your better chances you are.
I should have won 5 Opens there.
So the fact that Norman
missing the cardigan, Hayesy.
The fact that Norman was able to, Feldo went in, the defending champion, and we're at Royal St George's, and really annoying the way Feldo finished. Norman's already signed and he's won. Feldo hasn't got him. He's failed by 2, I think it was at the end. I remember the way Feldo, who I never really liked, I'm not sure I still do, but he made the putt on 18 to finish his round, and the way he celebrated, it was like he'd won the thing. I thought, Feldo, piss off. Norman's won it. Just walk off and be humble.
Let's take it like a man.
But if you watch it again, it's like he makes the putt, he closes it. Yeah, it's been a great defence, but you've come up short. The Australians got you. Don't give the impression that you're still the man, because the man had already signed his card. The man unfortunately said, yeah, I was in awe of myself, which I wish he hadn't done. But he was awesome that day. And I think for a lot of us growing up, a lot of our great memories have Greg, or not, have Greg Norman in the middle of them. So they're my two. What was your second one?
Great. Well, I think it's a popular one. It's the 2000 Open. Tiger's first win of the Open. He completed the career Grand Slam, I think, that week as well. But just his dominance that week, that was a crescendo for me, watching him go to a place where he should have been a fish out of water by so many accounts, going to a golf course that's so different to the majority of the golf courses that he as a young gun has grown up playing. And seeing him strategize his way around the golf course, he put on, people didn't really notice it at the time, but he put on an absolute tutorial about how to break down a golf course like St Andrews, and he executed it. Which
didn't find a bunker for the whole week, did he?
There was a bloke called
Liverpool.
It was okay.
Well, he didn't go in many though, because I remember the story about, I think his name was John, and so whenever you play the Open, you have bunker rakers, and they have a sheet where they mark down whenever, one or two or, however many bunkers they've raked per hole. And it got to the end of his scorecard and there was just perfect zeros. And to me, that is course management at its finest, because it's what you've got to do, especially when the bunkers are so penal like they are in the majority of Scotland. I just think it was absolutely stunning. He was in complete control. He ended up, how many did he win by? I think he ended up winning by 8 shots. Yeah. So, over Ernie Els and Thomas Bjorn, I think it was. So
he won the US Open that year by about 25, didn't he?
I think it was 15 shots.
Yeah, maybe not 25, but
pure dominance. Yeah. And seeing him, travel and go and do it when, arguably the pinnacle being winning an Open at St Andrews. Coincidentally, my two favourite moments were from St Andrews, but that was just
tear in her eye.
I know, it's very emotional. I know.
Where's the tissues, guys?
There's a million others we could have thrown in. Honourable mention to the year before, Troon 88. That was one of the when Seve shot 65 to beat Nick, and I think he might have played in the final round with the two Nicks. I think Feldo might have been in the last group with him that day with Nick Price. I think they still played 3-ball. That was the year that the Sunday was washed out, I think, and they had to finish the Open on a Monday. Seve shoots 65 to win it. I hope my brain's not playing games with you next. I didn't really do any research.
No, everything looks good so far.
I'm not making this up. It was, Ballesteros was for it. If it wasn't Norman who you were drawn to, it was Ballesteros going up.
Yeah.
In my vintage.
I loved it when IBF was telling us last week about, Ballesteros hitting that putt up ahead of him, winning it. I mean,
the pumping of how good did he look to him?
We all remember that fist pump.
Blue jumper.
Oh my God.
It's not like a Phil Mickelson fist pump. He still needs to work on those, by the way. I'm throwing him under the bus. But one last little thing that we haven't mentioned, 99 Open, any takers? Memorable in potentially one of the worst ways possible with Jean van der Velde.
Oh, yeah. Of course, yes.
Ouch.
Yes, yeah.
That is extraordinary. That's the most pulsating 20 minutes of television. I don't care what sport. That's just right up there.
Twitter had been around back then.
Oh,
the thing would have melted down.
Yeah, you'd need more bandwidth. You'd have to get
Amazon
it would have
more
bandwidth.
Apart.
That's another example of an Australian being right there. We sort of forget that, but Craig Parry's right there that day, and there's a handful of others who were actually not too far off him on the leaderboard as well. That's why I'm really confident about this week. I couldn't put my finger on it. I suspect leash, but I just very confident there's going to be one or two Aussies nipping at the heels.
Well, it might be Ash Hall, and we're about to hear from him. You've caught up with him, but you did mention IBF before. Anyone want to address Dan Jenkins' tweet before we get a wriggle on? Dan Jenkins, of course, legendary American golf writer, has written books about the game, and at his peak was as readable as any golf writer going around. Maybe have slipped past a little bit at the moment, Dan, but he's put out a tweet, Hayesy, which is just beggars belief, really.
I'm almost
it's a bit brutal, isn't it?
I'm always tempted not to read it because it really, really riles me. Dan, I just can't believe you've done this. How can a course that has provided such winners as Palmer, Trevino, Miller and Watson also have given us Ian Baker Finch? My heckles are so far up here on this. I slated him on Twitter. Heaps of other people did too. He's copped the rounds of the kitchen. What a moron. And how quickly... I mean, it's really simple for journos just to do this and try and think they can get away with it. This is what gives journos a bad name. This sort of irrational...
Coming from a journo as well.
Oh, I'm a journey, and Andy's a journo. Andy's a journo. You are these days too. This is why players don't respond to media. This is why public don't warm to journalists. This is so ill-founded and stupid and with no basis, this comment. And Dan Jenkins has been a journalistic legend.
Yeah, a doyen of the caper, no doubt.
And he's just tarnished his reputation in my eyes irreparably.
No doubt. I think this thing will follow the end of his career around, unfortunately, as closely as some of the great work he's done, and written some amazing books about the game in the elite time of his career. What I have loved about it is that, and by all means chip in, the fact that the global golfing community, not just Australians, but you get the opportunity to respond when you see it in social media these days. It's been universal. Like, they have condemned the comment in a variety. Current day players, past players, Europeans, Americans, Australians alike have said you're just out of line here. That's just really poor.
Get on Greg Chalmers' Twitter feed. He's given him a lovely little bake. And Greg Chalmers has got his finger on the pulse. He's a great man. We'll get him on here sooner than later. For him to come off the long run, I think that says a lot because he's a pretty mild-mannered guy. If only we could have had Dan Jenkins listening to Finchy last week, talking about the background of how he got to 1991. It's not a flash in the pan. It's just not.
No.
He was one of the great players in the world for a period of time, and he was the best player in the most important week of the golfing calendar in 1991. Did you go back and read the Rick Riley piece at any stage? Not yet, mate.
Oh, don't do it. If you want to stay happy, don't do it.
We love you, Finchy, and don't let that rubbish put you off, mate.
Well, I don't understand how you can say that, about IBF and not talk about a guy like Harrington. Because in the lead up, to his 2007 Open, his finishes going into that were 51st, 54th, and 2 missed cuts. Yeah. And he's walked away with the trophy and then ended up backing it up. And he was the first European to win back-to-back since 1906, in 2008 when he won at Royal Birkdale. He is, and I mean this with the utmost respect, one of the lesser exciting players to watch. He is a workhorse. He has worked his knuckles bare to get where he is. And he's not an overly talented player. We talked to Matt, earlier, and we've spoken to a couple of people about the levels of talent, and they do differ. I don't think that everyone is talented in golf. I think that some people got their technique right early on, and they worked hard to get where they are. Stacey Keating, fantastic example of that. And obviously we've had Stacey on the show before. She came to golf late and just worked so hard. And I remember talking to Gavin Veering about Padraig Harrington about, I don't even know, it must be about 15 years ago now. And Gavin himself, one of the most talented Australian players that never made it, he said that Padraig isn't actually that great, and I remember talking to Gav on the range about it, and I said, so how is he here and you can go out and shoot 62 like it's nothing at Victoria, which is not the easiest of layouts? How does that happen? He goes, he just works so hard and he does everything right. And, you look at Ian and he had truckloads of talent. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think the balance is a little off with that argument.
But whatever you think of Ian Baker Finch and his ability to that, there's always an Open winner or a Brownlow medalist or a Dally M winner or something that sort of doesn't sit well with amongst the absolute pantheon of champions. It doesn't mean they're less of a champion on that week or in that season. It's just not true. It's just so far-fetched. I could point you a couple of Open winners who I think that's clearly the pinnacle of their career. But they were the best player on the planet when you needed to be.
But if he hacked his way and gouged his way to victory and he won it because, 6 or 7 other players just fell over and couldn't cope with the moment, then so be it. The guy shot 29 on the front 9 on the last day when that moment cruels, a lesser individual. He stood up and revelled in it. And it wasn't until, what happened post, Birkdale that year that, the next part of the Baker Finch story started to be told. But to forget what he was when he won that championship, like, Dan Jenkins clearly has, it's just out of line. It's misguided and he's missed the mark by a long way. As we've said a few times, we're all hoping that there's going to be Australians right in the mix come Monday morning our time, early Monday morning our time. Everybody who knows Ash Hall hopes that it's going to be him because he's just a lovely big fella who is as genial an Australian golfer as there is. Mark Hayes caught up with him as he's competing in his second Open Championship.
G'day, Ash.
G'day, Hayesy. How's things?
Yeah, no, really well, mate, and we're thrilled that you can join us so close to your second Open Championship. I hope the nerves haven't got you yet.
No, they're pretty good. I think because it's the second one, it's pretty good. Certainly all business here. I've had a couple of comments from friends that were at the first one with me at Lytham 5 years ago that they can certainly tell a difference in me. So, I'll hopefully keep that going throughout the week.
So what is different, mate? Within yourself, how does it feel?
It feels good. I know my game feels good, so I'm happy with that. And I think from the last time, I just know what to expect. I know there's the grandstands are humongous, and I know there's lots of people around. I know there's the best players in the world. It's just there's no real unexpected things. The practice rounds have been huge, crowd-wise. It's real crazy crowds. Just people everywhere. Apparently, the ticket sales are huge. I want to say the grandstand on 18 might hold 15 to 20,000 people. So, it's going to be pretty good.
And you're keeping it just about as normal as any human could, I imagine, by having so many family and friends around you. I understand.
Yeah, we've got a big house in Formby, 20 minutes down the road. I got my mum and dad and some good family friends from Melbourne and friends from America with us as well, and the kids. The kids keep it normal. So I can't be too good for them because they need dad and what have you. So with my late tea time on Thursday, I'm still going to have plenty to do.
So to them, it's just a pro-am in Perth.
Yeah, it's just it's just nothing. Cooper's it's fun. I can remember 5 years ago he was just on the crawl, but now he's every day I come home after I've been practicing, he asks me how many holes I've played and how's it going and what have you. So he likes it, even though he's not watching me. He's too consumed in the daycare here, but. He's asking me what's going on, so it's really nice.
Now, mate, before we get to your thoughts on Birkdale itself, you have been in England for a couple of weeks now, and you've played a few courses that are not now on the rota, but I suppose Royal St George's still is. But you've managed to get a few courses that have hosted Open Championships under your belt. You're in pretty good links form, I'd imagine.
Yes. We went down to and played down south and played Royal St George's and Royal Cinque Ports and Princes, which was great because it's very hard in Australia. It's very hard to replicate style of play and the bounces that you get. And it was one thing I learned 5 years ago that Scottish links and English links are a little bit different as well. The English sometimes have the greens a little bit raised up just a touch, with Scotland a little bit down on the ground and a bit more wild. So, I'm just, drawing on past experience about how I can prepare the best, and it's been great because the weather here has been very hot. or hot for UK standards. Only a few days in the 30s recently. It's actually quite. People are complaining today because it's 24. But the courses were down south were nice and dry, and Birkdale's firming up as well. So it's been really good practice for me.
So you've had a couple of looks at Birkdale again this year, and I know you've experienced it a few times in the past. Everyone raves about it as being one of the great courses. Is that your opinion? Is it in the same shape that it was in 2008 when we last saw it in the Open?
Yes. Everyone. I think the real reason why I think everyone loves it is because it's very fair. The fairways for a links are quite are flat. Royal St George's is a little bit wild on fairways. You might get some balls that bounce from one side to the other, but here it's very fair, and a lot of the professionals actually, like that because we like to know where our ball's going to finish up, and it's in just perfect condition, and you won't talk to anyone this week that says a bad thing about the place. Everyone just loves it.
So, mate, is it true that you would probably look to make your score in the the last half a dozen holes? Is that how you were going to approach it? It seemed from the last time around that the par fives on the back was where the scores were made, and you sort of maybe just hanging on score wise around the front.
Yeah, the front's an awesome test. It starts from the first hole. The first tee shot could be the hardest tee shot on the open rotor. Out of bounds right, bunker left. The wind normally whips left to right, and then you hold on the front nine, and then you've got 15 and 17 as the only two par fives, and they're both reachable, especially with it being so firm. We can certainly reach them. So, even when it's calm, it's still a strong test, and it is meant to blow a little bit. I remember watching it last time, especially because Norman was. Almost put something out of the bag, almost winning last time. But it was blowing pretty hard for a good 3 or 4 days last time.
And it looks like the forecast is, well, I wouldn't say horrendous, but it's going to be fairly rugged for the last few days of the week. Yeah,
it's not good. So we'll just see what happens. It wouldn't be the UK or the Open without some wind or some rain and stuff like that. So we'll see. Maybe I can have an advantage with a tee time so late on Thursday. Maybe the weather might improve by then or something like that. But yeah, it is what it is, and that's just the Open, I think.
Does it play into your hands a little bit, mate, or just Australians' hands generally, to be required to play in the wind? Does it take a lot of the Americans out of the contest?
Yeah, I think so. They certainly notice the elements more than what we do and might complain or something like that. But especially myself, growing up in Victoria and playing a lot of my junior golf down the peninsula and things like that. So I've certainly known my game around the wind, and we play off nice tight grass as well in the sandbelt, which is very similar to this.
Ash, I think it's pretty well known. We've chatted to you in a few different forums over the last few years that it came close. You came close to giving the game away a couple of years ago, or were forced into that because I know you love your golf, but things have obviously turned around. We chatted to you on Australian Open Radio last year when you'd made the playoff or just about to start the playoff for your national championship, and it seemed that you were, in some ways just thrilled to get there. I put it to you now that you've got the ability to go much further than that in the Open Championship, and maybe the rubbing shoulders with Jordan Spieth's given you the confidence to do that.
Yes, I'd agree with that. Certainly at the time, I was surprised that the score that I ended up having was good enough. Some players fell back a little bit, and it was a surprise, and I was really happy. And when I hold the putt on the last, I was just more happy that it was potentially for a spot in the Open. It's kind of how much this tournament means, and I suppose the other side of it, the downer part of it, was that I was so close, and I was in a playoff, and I think about how I played during the week, and you can always find a shot or two or three that you could have played different, or some putts that went in, and I kind of thought, oh, you know what, I actually probably could have won the Australian Open, but it's always better to have a chance than not have a chance. So, and it's actually been really nice here this week. We've run into Jordan and Michael, who's caddy, and they remember me and say good day and what have you. So it makes me feel comfortable in this field, and certainly know and shown now that I can do it.
And you've sat there, mate, and watched Australia's best players play in various Opens over the years. You beat just about every one of them last year. It again must give you that confidence to realise that you do actually have the game that belongs, especially on in a linksy sort of format.
Yeah. It is nice, and I suppose it's the way it is. It might be, and hopefully be my time now to get on TV, and someone might be watching me up late at night. That's kind of nice, and kind of puts a little smirk on my face that might happen. But yeah, it's certainly had a lot of times sitting watching our great players, and it's nice knowing that I played a practice round with Mark Leishman yesterday, and how close did he come winning this a couple of years ago? So it's nice to just stack your game up against some people like that sometimes.
Well, mate, us at Inside the Ropes are very buoyant about your chances, and we always appreciate your time. So generous, especially so close to one of the big days of your career, and we wish you all the best, and we want to see you get at least the 4 days in, and hopefully be there late on the Sunday afternoon walking up to that grandstand when it's absolutely chockers.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, happy to be on. Ask me anytime, and happy to help out.
Good on you. Thanks very much, Ashhole, and all the best for the Open.
All right, cheers. Thank you.
Hi, this is Sherelle McMahon. Swing Fit is the fun, healthy, social way for women to get started in golf. You'll learn the basics of the golf swing and how to putt over a 6-week program, and get your whole body moving through yoga and Pilates style exercises. You don't need any golf knowledge or equipment. Simply turn up in comfy clothing and get started. You'll be surrounded by like-minded people and receive constant support. So get outdoors, meet new friends, and learn a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. To find a program near you, visit swingfit.com.au.
G'day guys, it's Ryan Ruffles here. I know I'm a long way from home, playing on the Latin America tour and living in the US, but I keep up with all my Australian golf by listening to Inside the Ropes.
Well, welcome back to Inside the Ropes, and due to popular demand, because we've been ranting off at a great rate the last couple of weeks about various rules, infractions or otherwise that may have occurred in the professional game, we've got a very, very special guest to join us, Simon Magdulski, Golf Australia's Rules and Handicapping Director. Welcome aboard, mate.
Thanks, Hayesy. It is terrific to be here. I do enjoy discussions, debates in the office, so it's great to be with you on the hottest ticket in golf.
Well, thank you very much for saying that, Simon. You can take the tongue out of your cheek right now. I mean, I came within an inch of losing my job last week with my opinions on some of the rules. So rather than someone who's got really no idea what they're talking about, we thought we'd go to the top and come to you. But we do have I've got an interesting new segment here, or an interesting new concept, shall we say. And it's going to call this segment, I Put It to You, Simon. And we're going to follow some instructions. And if we get a little bit dry or we start running off a bit here, we're going to have a sound that's going to interrupt you and or myself. And then we're going to get judged by Ali and Andy on how we're going in deciding what should happen with the future of the rules of the game. You ready to play?
I can't wait.
I can imagine. All right, here we go, mate. Question number 1. I put it to you, Simon, that the rules should not judge intent. Rather, they should focus on the actual action. And I'm definitely referring to both the anchoring and the positioning of ball problems that we've seen in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think with anchoring specifically, if you strip intent out of that rule, what you end up doing is penalising pretty much everyone who brushes their hands against their leg or against their chest. And if you imagine, particularly on wet, windy days with people wearing wet weather gear, a lot of people are brushing their hands against their body or against their clothes. So the idea of stripping intent out of the rule, it solves one problem, but it opens up a whole bunch of other problems. We end up penalising a lot more players than we otherwise would. And my general view would be I think we need less penalties in the game, not more. So I think intent in this rule is very helpful.
Do you not think that we can see the difference between 60 km/h wind brushing a wind cheater against someone's hand than what Scott McCarron's doing?
Again, I think what you want to be doing is only penalising the people who are breaching the intent of the rule. I don't think you want to end up creating a whole lot of collateral damage and penalising people who are not anchoring. They're not intending to anchor. I think in just about every case, it's pretty obvious whether someone is anchoring or not. The likes of McCarron, Langer, I think these sort of cases, it's one for the committee in charge of the competition to look at video to make some sort of determination. If there's a grey area, they can get the player in and have a chat to the player, raise any concerns, let them know what they should be doing. But equally, if the committee's not concerned about it, they can let the player know where the boundary is and we move forward from there. That said, if there is actually a problem with the rule, it's one for the committee to raise with the RNA and the USGA, and the RNA and USGA have shown in recent times that they can react very quickly where there is a clear deficiency. Now, I'm not sure if the PGA Tour has raised with the USGA that there is a problem. That may well have been the case. I haven't seen that. If there is a problem, I think the USGA and the RNA will work through that.
You've just... I knew it was getting really close. I knew that was coming. Questions from the gallery to Simon's first response?
In terms of certain cases, surely, they can just be put to the panel and then the panel decides at the end of their decision whether that person is or isn't anchoring when people, you mentioned Bernard Langer and Scott McCarron and that kind of thing. Like, there's so much chatter, especially in social media outlets about it. Are they a bit scared to ruffle the feathers of those really good players, or is it purely from a rules perspective?
To be perfectly honest, you'd have to be a part of the discussion at PGA Tour level to understand what's driving their decision. They may well have gone to the USGA and said, "Hey, we don't think this rule is quite working properly as it is. Can we get some sort of clarification?" Or the tour might have looked at it and said, "You know what, we're comfortable with what these guys are doing." They might have sat the guys down and said, "Look, if you go just this little bit further, there's going to be a problem, but we'll let you know if you're doing that. But up until that point, we're happy to keep going." You'd have to be a part of those internal discussions, and I'm not privy to that.
Simon, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. For those two players that Hayesy has mentioned, do you think they anchor?
To be perfectly honest with Langer, I've seen a couple of videos. I haven't looked at it as great a depth as Hayesy has. If this does end up going to the USGA and the RNA for some sort of clarification, and there's a desire to further clarify the rule, then I'd get involved at that stage. But I haven't seen any correspondence along those lines.
Hayesy, that sounds like one of those AFL coaches who, when asked about one of his players who might have whacked a bloke behind play, says, I haven't seen the vision yet, so I've got no comment to make.
Look, I can say that I'm a big Arsenal supporter, and Arsene Wenger's classic line is, "I'm sorry, I didn't see that." So.
Number 2, I put it to you, Simon, that the time has come for my hobby horse bifurcation between the amateur and professional games, once for ball technology and once for anchoring, which should be allowed in competitions played under handicap conditions.
Firstly, anchoring. I think the view basically is that anchoring just isn't a golf shot. It's like the old croquet style of shot or playing a billiards style of shot. It's just not considered to be golf, whether it's at the elite professional level or whether it's at the club golf level.
But won't your handicap sort that out at club level?
You could make the same argument around the croquet style shot. it would give some people an advantage, and you could say, look, the handicap will equalise that out. But what the RNA and USGA are saying, and there was also an extensive period of public consultation around the anchoring rule. Where the RNA and USGA have landed with this is that they're saying this is just not a golf shot. As a result, we're trying to shift it out of the game.
Okay.
That said, there is also a position for some people who have got neurological or physiological issues, and I have seen some correspondence from these people who do want some sort of an exemption with anchoring, and I've got a lot of sympathy for that, and I think the game needs to accommodate that.
And bifurcation on the ball distance?
Again, the RNA and USGA have said that they are in the middle of a review on this, on equipment and balls. I'd like to see where that lands. Is bifurcation an option? That'll be one of the things I think they're looking at. Is there a better solution? Let's look at what all of the options end up coming out as and make a decision based on that. Hayesy, like you, I do have concerns about how far some of these guys are hitting the ball these days. And that's not purely around ball technology and club technology. The science around around golfers' swings and golf fitness is so far advanced to what it was even 20 years ago. You know, you look at the guys on tour now and the girls on tour, and it's a big difference to where we were 20 years ago. And all of that feeds into much greater distances.
But the only thing is I can't get Camilo Villegas to go and eat 6-4 and 20s before a round, can I?
No, that would be one way of addressing the problem. There are some golfers who'd still be very keen to do that.
Crew, anything? No, we're going to leave that one alone. Okay, number 3, Simon. I put it to you that, as our co-host last week, Joe Charlton, suggested, we should have uniformity in penalties so they're more easily understood by all, players and spectators alike. That is, a one-shot or a two-shot penalty, but not both.
Yeah, currently in stroke play there are 3 levels of penalty: the one-stroke penalty, two-stroke penalty and DQ. If someone accidentally moves their ball on a fairway and then they replace the ball, do I want to give them a two-stroke penalty for that? No, I don't. If a player chop something down that is going to help their backswing, is that only worth a one-stroke penalty? I think it's probably worth 2 because they're getting a clear advantage for it. So is there a place in the game for different scales of penalty? I think there probably is. What the game does need to do, though, I think, is to strip out as many of the unnecessary differences as possible. And this rules modernisation process that the RNA and USGA are working through at the moment, that's one of its objectives there. Now, Hayesy, our boss, who we have a huge amount of respect
and
for,
love.
we absolutely. What he would like to see happen is strip out a lot of the differences between match play rules and stroke play rules. I think that would be helpful in a lot of cases. Do we need a lot of loss of hole penalties? Perhaps we could start moving to two-stroke penalties in match play to make it a bit simpler. But also some of the penalties in match play are that your opponent has the option to require the other player to play the shot again. Now, is that sort of added layer of complexity required? Well, maybe that's something that could be looked at as well. Maybe the option there is let's have a two-shot penalty instead of giving the player the option to recall the stroke.
Now, knowing how much you know the rules, Simon, I'm going to ask a question now. In terms of any disciplinary actions, in life in general, there is usually a staggered effect. So the more serious crimes are more harshly punished. My take on the rules, as a general rule, is that the two-stroke penalties go to the things that are going to teach you how to play the game within the realms of etiquette and integrity. The things that are potentially you could get away with if no one was watching are more harshly punished than potentially, the silly mistakes. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, in part, and also where you're getting a genuine advantage for the action. So the objective is always to have the outcome be proportionate to the act that you've committed. I said before, you accidentally touch your ball on the fairway and the ball moves. Do you really want to penalise someone 2 shots for that? I don't. I think one's enough. But again, if you improve your backswing or your area of intended play, then I think I think there's a case
Perfectly
for having
timed.
a two-shot penalty. Yeah.
Simon, I put it to you that additional penalties for signing incorrect cards when any external factor is subsequently applied after a round, e.g. Lexi Thompson, what happened at the A&A Inspiration, is tough to understand and swallow from a spectator's viewpoint.
Look, Lexi Thompson getting a 4-shot penalty when she was leading the tournament, I've got to say I felt uncomfortable with that. To me, that's a lot of shots. I don't think that the outcome was proportionate to the act. The public view on that, I do have a lot of sympathy for the public view. Now, the flip side of it is, and the reason why there is this added penalty, is that if you don't have the added penalty, you're actually incentivising the player not to know the rules. They can say, well, I did this and I didn't include the penalty because I didn't know there was a penalty. Now, that's not to say that the player does know that there's a penalty and they're just trying to run a line. But a lot of players aren't necessarily great on the rules. If you give this added... Ali's nodding.
I'm agreeing completely, yep.
And look, my experience of Ali on course, and I've done a couple of rulings for her over the journey, but she's probably one of the better players. There are a lot of players out there who, if they have any sort of problem, they just put their hand up and referee comes in and you help them out. But if you're actually incentivising the player not to know the rules, that's a problem. So that's why there is this added 2-shot penalty. But I think I think it's too much. And again, the RNA and USGA have said that they're looking at this specifically at the moment. So watch this space on that one.
Nice. And just before the buzzer again, you're on fire at the moment. Last one, mate. I know the seat's getting pretty hot over there. I put it to you, Simon, that without clear, logical and consistent application of the rules at all levels of the sport, the game puts itself in a position to be mocked that is totally unnecessary and avoidable, especially in this age when we're trying to attract every new player that we can.
Yeah, I think where the game gets into trouble with the rules is where the outcome just isn't proportionate with the act. The Dustin Johnson thing, I think people looked at that and thought, you know what, he didn't touch the ball and maybe he caused it to move, but do we really need to penalise him for that? Now, again, there's been a pretty quick change in the rules at that level of the game, so that's been cleaned up. The Lexi Thompson thing, again, I think people looked at that and thought, 4 shots for that, really? Over half an inch? Do we really need to be penalising him 4 shots for that? Again, there's been this quick reaction by the RNA and the USGA, so now I think the outcome is proportionate with the act. And the John Rahm case, some people might say he should have been penalised. Me personally, he moves his ball to help one of his fellow competitors. Does he get it back in exactly the right place? No, he doesn't. Do we really need to penalise him a couple of shots for an inch when he's trying to help out one of his mates? I just don't think the game needs that. I want the player who wins the golf tournament to be the player who's had the least number of shots.
I agree in theory with that last response, but last part of it, but surely it's a fundamental aspect of the game to play your ball where it lies as best as possible.
It is, but if you want to get very tight with GPS location, I reckon you could find a lot of players when they're replacing balls on greens that they don't get it quite right. The Lexi Thompson thing, when you're coming in from the side and trying to put a ball down, trying to put a marker down behind the ball, you're never going to align it quite right. And one of Lexi's problems, I think, was that she didn't pick the ball up and walk away and come back a minute and a half later. She did it immediately, so it was very obvious what she did. But if you went through the process of looking at what a lot of other players do, and Phil Mickelson's made this point, he thinks there's a lot of inexactness out there. I think you'd probably find that a lot of other players do similar things, and not trying to bend the rules in any way. It's just honest mistakes.
One of the funniest things for me when I started doing the TV commentary was how many girls came up to me, and I will not name any names on either side of this, but there were a couple of girls that they wanted checked. They said, if you can get people to zoom in when this girl's on the green, we would love to know the outcome of that, whether you saw anything there, because everyone on tour knows these people. It's something that you never talk about to the media, which, you know, is good and bad, because you could stop it pretty quickly if you did talk to the media, presumably. But there are a lot of players that do it, and, you know, using, I mean, the examples of these two that, you know, didn't mean to do it getting harshly punished versus the quote unquote intent, you know, comes back into play.
Jack Nicklaus made some great comments. He was saying, look, a way of handling this is you get the player in quietly, you show them the footage, you have a word to them, you let them know that they're crossing a boundary. If they keep doing that, then they'll be penalised, move on. The game doesn't need all of the bad publicity that it got over Lexi Thompson.
Very, very smooth, Simon. I'm chuffed with the way you've come in and confronted your harshest critics.
Mate, I've been thrilled to be here.
Thrilled? We will get you back, mate. You've done beautifully. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside the Ropes, and I'm sure we'll be ranting again at some point in the near future, and we'll have you back in a second time.
Mate, I look forward to our ongoing discussions in the office as well.
The Golf Australia website is now the place to go to look up your handicap and so much more. Whether you're out and about on your phone or in the office trying to avoid work, just go to golf.org.au and punch your golf link number into the box at the top of the homepage. Who knows, maybe that last round was just good enough to put you in single figures. While you're on the site, check out the daily golf results at your club, view our course index for up-to-date ratings, read the latest golf news from home and abroad, listen to Australian golf podcasts and interviews, and watch video tournament highlights or tips to improve your game. It's everything a golf tragic could want. Visit golf.org.au today, the home of Australian golf.
Hi, my name is Soyeon Yu, who play on the LPGA Tour, and I love Vegemite, but I love Cedro more than Vegemite.
Well, there's a whole lot of reasons that we're all focusing on the Open Championship, and I've got to say, one of the more obscure levers into the 146th play in the Open Championship is young Sam Blewett, who is the son of Greg Blewett, who everybody who knows and loves their Australian cricket knows only too well. 46 tests. I think he played for Australia, the current fielding coach with Cricket Australia, and a fine golfer in his own right. But we're not even talking about G. Blewett anymore. We're talking about young Sam, and Greg's been good enough to join us on Inside the Ropes. Hello, mate.
I'm very well. I'm looking forward to this afternoon, knocking off and getting home to watch the golf. But no, I'm really well. Looking forward to it.
And is the family all on the Ricky Fowler bandwagon, or is it just the little fella?
No, we're all on him. I've had a little splurge on Ricky, so I reckon his last 12 months have been outstanding. So I reckon he's as good a chance as anyone. I don't think any of the top boys are playing that well, apart from Ricky. So I reckon he's half a chance.
And the reason we're talking about Ricky Fowler and you through the paradigm of your 2.5-year-old son is because not only does the little fella who carries the Blewett surname have a very, very good golf swing at that age, but he seems to be, and we've seen it via various social media platforms, Greg, he's obsessed with Ricky Fowler. How did this all come about?
Well, this is all thanks to my wife, who films absolutely everything. So it's not only our kids, but also the dog gets a bit of a run as well. He hasn't gone viral yet, but she films absolutely everything. So it's like a little paparazzi following us around. But he, I don't know, he just gravitated towards Ricky for some reason. Whether it's whether it's the bright colours of his clothes, or I'm not too sure. But he can't. I mean, he's 2.5. He's a bit slow on the talking at the moment, but he can say, well, he attempts to say Ricky. It's more of a Ricky blah blah, and he can get Brooks Koepka out, but that's about it. So they seem like that's his two favourites. But he's got the Ricky Fowler poster up now in his room, which is also thanks to my lovely wife. But he seems to be the flavour of the month at the moment.
Was he kissing that poster around the knee area last night? And the last one I saw, Greg?
Oh, mate, it is a bit tragic, I've got to admit, but he kisses Ricky goodnight every night. So Mum and Dad get a kiss, the brother gets a kiss, and then Ricky's the last one to get a kiss.
Unbelievable. All right, for those who aren't following along already, and I can't believe there are many left in Australia who aren't, Sam Blewett Golf on Twitter, @SamBlewettGolf. As you say, he's become a bit of a viral sensation. He's done some amazing things, and I'm not saying that because you're here. I mean, it's legitimately amazing what a 2-year-old's doing with a golf stick, and he seems obsessed, Greg. My personal favourite's when he whacks one out of your teeth.
Well, that wasn't planned. Obviously, it's sort of it was it was like a little funnel sitting on top of my forehead, and again, I got bullied into it by my wife. She goes, "Carl, let's just give this a crack." And then he went bash, and it sort of obviously dug into my nose and sort of started bleeding in between on the bridge of the nose. So, yeah, that one went all right. And then I think it all sort of started with, we've got an ice dispenser in our fridge, and he just did it out of the blue. He grabbed an ice club and started getting the ice cubes out of the fridge and then whacking them off the floor like, the ice cubes were his golf balls. So that's sort of how it's all sort of started on the social media, and then, the missus has caught on with it, and she's running with it, yeah.
What about the tanties, mate? He has thrown some of the great tanties when you've gone to pick him up or rip his club out of his hands when you've got to go somewhere. Have you got that under control?
No. Well, you've seen one of them. That's a regular occurrence. He's probably getting a little bit better, I'd say, but, he's obviously at that age. He's 2.5, and he likes to get his own way, but yeah, I don't know. We're lucky enough we back onto an oval, so we go out a couple of times a day to, take the dog out. But Sam comes out with the golf clubs, and I try and, take a football out there or a soccer ball to try and get him kicking around. But if we don't take the golf clubs out, that's it. He won't go out without his golf clubs. So that's just the way he is. I mean, he's absolutely obsessed with golf. I watch a lot of golf anyway on TV, but if I go to sort of, switch it over to the football or, something else, he's not a happy unit. So, I don't know, it's just the way, I think it all sort of started with, I do love my golf, and I had a wedge downstairs in the TV, and when he was smaller, about the age of 1, I was sort of, just practicing my chipping and trying to groove the swing while I was watching TV, and I think he just sort of picked it up from there. But, he's obsessed at the moment.
It's nice to hear, Greg, that a lot of the pros that I've played alongside, that started at a young age, their parents heavily incentivized playing golf. They'd say they go out to the park and they'd say if you hit this tree, you get a treat, or you get a dole, or whatever it was that they wanted. Do you feel the need, or it sounds as though the want is just purely coming from him?
Yeah, that's right. No, not at all. We're certainly not that way inclined, and myself coming from a sporting background, I certainly don't want to be seen as one of those parents or pushy parents, and we're just going to let him evolve with it. I mean, I think there'll come a time when he's exposed to football and cricket. Once he gets around kids his age, around about starting school or whatever, and he can do absolutely whatever he wants. We're certainly not saying that, golf is the sport, but we certainly don't either, give him a lolly if he holds one from 15 feet or anything like that. So, he's just purely playing at the moment. It's great to watch.
So enough about young Sam, unless you got one.
I got one more.
Okay, right, go on. Right.
Sorry to interrupt you, Andy, but
go on.
Bluey, he's probably too young to appreciate it, but, when you put out a tweet on his behalf and Steve Smith retweets it, or, one of the Indian legends retweets it or something like that from the cricket sense, I mean. Yep. Has he got any concept of what that means and how far his little brand, for want of better words, growing?
No idea. And I suppose when he, does get to an age where he can probably look back and see some of the videos, he'll probably have a bit of a chuckle. But no, he's got no idea. Him and Steve Smith are great mates. Smudger loves Sam, so he spends a lot of time in his room when we're on tour or interstate, so they've got a great little connection, and I think, Steve just loves, little kids and sport and all that sort of stuff, so it's a good little relationship, and, David Warner's got a couple of little girls, and he's always playing with Sam as well. They all love having the kids around, so it's, it's pretty cool.
So let's talk about the old man who, obviously loves the game and is particularly good at it, and before we finish up this chat, people who don't know that will have a sense for it. How much was it a trade-off for you, Greg, when you were playing cricket? That I'm sure you still played as much golf as you possibly could, but you weren't able to commit to the game the way you can post your cricket playing career. How much was it a trade-off for you that you had to kind of give the game away?
Oh, well, golf was just a really fun thing for me to do. Like, I never really aimed to be that good at it, to be honest. It was just a great little outlet for me, get away from cricket, get out with some mates, be competitive. You know, I always make sure I go in the comp, have a little side bet amongst ourselves. And to me, that was just a great way to, be competitive, but also not be in an environment where I was worrying about my cricket or, anything else. So that's really how it started. And when I was playing cricket professionally, I'd sort of play off a handicap of around about 4, but I never practiced golf. I absolutely hated it. And it's only since I gave cricket away that I've really enjoyed, getting out in the range and having, I could have a chip and a putt for 2 hours at least. I love it, getting out in the fresh air, and, I've learnt a lot about, different grasses and, bounces on wedges and all that sort of stuff. I had no idea until about, 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm learning all the time, and I want to get better at it. Like anything else, I just want to get better at it. So I don't find enough, like a lot of people, don't find enough time to get out as much as I'd like to at the moment, but I just think it's an unbelievable sport, and I'm glad the little fella's playing at the moment, and hopefully, he plays it, well into his adulthood as well. But it's a great game, that's for sure.
Greg, we see a lot of, professional athletes struggle at the transition once they finish playing their own sport. Would you say that golf has been integral to kind of your transition period, that it kind of gave you something, to really invest in that wasn't cricket?
Yeah, definitely. So, I transitioned straight into the media after I finished playing, and had a fair bit of time on my hands, to be honest. Like, sometimes I'd go 2 or 3 weeks where I didn't have to work. So I was also single at the time, so I just get in my car and head down to the golf course and either play or practice. But it definitely filled a gap for me, there's no doubt about that. It gave me something to sort of get my teeth into and as I said, try and get better at it. And I love being competitive as well, so it doesn't matter what sport I play. I love trying to do my best, and it definitely filled a void for me. There's no doubt about it.
I got $20 in my pocket, Blue. It's my last lobster, and I've got to watch you and Ricky Ponting play a game of golf. Who am I putting it on?
It's a bloody good question. I reckon he gets asked that all the time. I certainly do. We actually haven't played that much golf together. Whenever we're at a golf event, we're normally playing in, different groups. So I'd like to think it'd be a pretty good game, but knowing, we probably started out as pretty similar cricketers, and then Ricky took over, so he'd probably do the same on the golf course. I'm not too sure, but I'd like to think it'd be a pretty good game.
So let me ask you like a semi-serious question about golf. Yep. You post your cricket playing days, you make two, maybe even more. I can't remember state teams. To play, in the national championships of South Australia. Yep. And I don't know what year it was, maybe, correct me, 2012, you square a match when South Australia's taken on New South Wales against Dimi Papadakis.
Yeah. I had a 6-footer to win that as well on 18 and missed it.
So Papadakis goes on, to win professional tournaments, and, you're at different age groups, obviously, but, he's going to be, it's all in front of him, and he's got, number 280 in the world or wherever he sits right now. Has there ever been in any of your little quiet moments, as good a cricketer as you were, and I'm not saying you want to trade any of that in, but do you ever think, shit, if I'd have, played golf, who knows what I might have been able to do? Like, has that thought ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, I'd like to, like any other sports person, I reckon, you'd like to think that if you, started at a young age on a different sport, that you might have been, pretty good at it. And you're right, like I've followed the progress of a few of those guys that played in that interstate series. Cameron Smith was one of those guys as well. He played in that interstate series. I didn't play against him, but I think I played a couple of times against Anthony Houston from Victoria. He powered me up a couple of times. But, I definitely have followed those guys' careers quite closely. And as you said, Andy, they're definitely at a different age to what I am, and I certainly can't sort of at a stage where I can give golf a fair dinkum crack. I've got to, put a couple of kids through college and keep earning a living. But I'd be lying if I haven't looked into the seniors tour, but I've sort of looked into a little bit of detail about some of the overseas tours like the European seniors and the American seniors, and it's bloody just about impossible to get a card there, and it's quite an expensive exercise as well. But in terms of trying to, I was getting asked that question all the time when I was playing
some state golf, but it's never entered my mind. I just haven't. I can't, give work up for a couple of years to give it a crack. There's no way. But I followed those guys, and they've done well. Jimmy's done really well. Won a couple of tournaments and done well for himself.
So just before we let you go, what have you got the mark down to now, Bluey, and where are you playing your golf?
Yeah, I think I'm on scratch. I'm plus 0.4 or something like that. So, mate, I'm not playing much. I've been home from England for a month. I've played once. I'm playing down at Kooyonga. Having said that, we've got an event. We've got a Varden event on Sunday, which I've entered into. So I'm going to try and sneak away, play a round of golf tomorrow, get a bit of practice in and see how I go on Sunday. But, just not playing as much as I'd like at the moment. But I'm hoping that that might change a little bit going forward.
And one last one. We'd be wrong of us not to ask you about the current state of play with the administrators and the cricketers. Are we going to get? I mean, you're close to both sides of this. I imagine. You sort of straddle it. As a guy who works with the players and a past player, not that long ago, really, and somebody who sees it, I'm sure, from the employer's perspective as well. Are you confident this is going to get resolved, amicably and as soon as possible?
Well, it'll definitely get resolved. I mean, it was pleasing to hear last week that, some constructive talks had started. It is a real shame it's got to this. They've had, an MOU goes for 5 years, so you'd like to think either a year out or 2 years out they might have started talking about this a little bit more, but I'm confident it'll get done. It's not a great look for cricket, there's no doubt about that, and I reckon there will be some scars between the players and the administration, but I think, time will heal that, and I just hope that it's done for everyone's sake because we've got a big summer coming up.
Absolutely. We all love our cricket as much as we love our golf, mate. Hey, thanks for joining us on the show. Great to see the little fella enjoying the game as much as he is, and it sounds like a fantastic environment for him to enjoy all the good things about the game of golf. Thanks for your time, mate.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Greg Blewett joining us on Inside the Ropes.
G'day, it's Nick O'Hearn here. Whenever I get the chance, I catch up with Inside the Ropes to follow up on all the latest golf, and I urge you all do the same. It's a great show.
Okay, time to wrap up the various other little bits and pieces before we wrap up another edition of Inside the Ropes. Because of the focus on the Open Championship, we haven't addressed the US Women's Open yet. We should, and we will, and we'll do it now. 4 Koreans filled the top 4 spots on the leaderboard. Remarkable again, not a surprise. What did you take away from the women's major last week?
I felt like it was a really strange US Open. I felt like the vibe was challenging.
Trump?
Yeah, I mean, elephant in the room, really, isn't it? And I'm not a highly political person, and I'll keep my views out of.
Feel free to share them if you wish.
No, I don't really feel the need because I would rather analyse the impact it had on the players having him there, and I had a chat with a couple of the players after. One of my friends on tour, Marina Alex, ended up as top American in tied 11th, I think it was, and that was in her home state. So massive props go to her, but it was just having an amateur in the mix, and we've seen a lot of Herjin Choi over the years. She came runner-up to Lydia Ko in the New Zealand Women's Open a couple of years ago, obviously the Australian Amateur as well. Hayesy, you've seen a lot of her game. I think she's picked up a little length. So
yes.
Two great players to watch, really, and I feel like that was overshadowed a little bit by A, nationality, and B, Trump, in a way. The players were sent an email earlier in the week saying we're going to have security is going to be higher, add extra time to your warm-ups. So instead of going in, they went in and they had to go through the process. Christy Kerr, when she went to go and catch up with old Trumpy in the little box that he was in, she got frisked. She's come straight off the course and she got frisked going in to go and have a chat with him, which I understand the protocol, but at the same time, this is a US Open as well, so it's a tricky one.
Stay away. When you said nationality, then what do you mean?
Well, I went online, read a lot of the comments about the week, and a lot of people feel in Western parts of the world they feel like they can't get invested in a lot of the Asian players, and to that, I say go and have a chat with Shan Feng and tell me she's not one of the biggest legends around. This is a girl that she won the bronze medal. She calls it the rose gold medal at the Olympics, and she wanted to have a replica made so that she could take it out to karaoke when she got home to celebrate.
How awesome is that?
And tell me that you can't get on board with that. So, and she falls asleep in rain delays. Like, she took a pillow to the golf course in Malaysia last year in the final round because she knew there'd been a rain delay, and she was sleeping. And so all of the players are going up. And thankfully, not many of these pictures actually made it out, but it was certainly going around our group chats where people are taking selfies with a sleeping Shan Feng. She didn't care. She thinks it's hilarious. So, there are people to barrack for. Obviously, the winner, Sun Hyung Park. I thought she was going to win in her very first start in Singapore. This year, we were looking up the record books, and it was, I think, 55 years since someone had won their first start or something like that. We thought she was going to do it there. Not surprised it's a major. Go online, have a look at this girl's golf swing. It is incredible. And she's got no coach. She just does it herself. She just looks on her phone. And why would you? I mean, so is this picture perfect.
Is this a problem for the women's game? In terms of the marketing of the women's game, and we spoke to So-Yeon Yu about this a couple of weeks ago when she joined us on the show, and she's another one who's just got a vibrant, vivacious, warm personality. And if you can't get invested in her, then you're just not looking. You're not trying to embrace somebody who's from a different part of the world. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it was tricky, and I have to give credit. When I was watching, I think it was Shane Bacon and Holly Saunders who had to do, and I shouldn't say had to do, but did the post-round interviews with both Choi and Sun Hyung Park. And whenever there's a translator involved, I can tell you from a TV standpoint, you do not look forward to those interviews. They are so hard to do. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Carolyn Bivens trying to make, English. The players that came on to the LPGA were almost forced to learn English about, I think it was only about 7 years ago now, maybe 8 years ago. But there's an argument for it and against it. Neither way, it's a world tour now. Mike Wan wanted to take the LPGA to the world. He's done it. And now they just have to try and work out how to make the coverage better so that everyone can find something to get on board with those players, because they've all got great stories and, get invested.
This xenophobia, though.
It's crazy. It's embarrassing.
It really is. And the ratings were way down, and there's heaps of debate about whether it was the Fox coverage, whether it's the 8 Koreans in the top 10. There's a whole raft of considerations. But if it's not that they're Korean, I find it really difficult to swallow, because I don't think we don't watch a golf tournament based on whether it's NBC or CBS. You just tune in because it's golf. These Korean girls are awesome. Hana Jang is another one. We've already listed 2. She's such a character, and it's the world, the golfing world's lost and fans lost if they don't pick up an interest in these girls, because they're beautiful people. Forget their golf; they're just wonderful people. Tremendous pity if we don't, take advantage of their outstanding talent and great work ethic.
It's a really difficult thing to talk about, because I know from the Korean perspective, and I've got friends that work on the KLPGA that play out there as well, and they get grief in a way, and I'm trying to say this delicately, but Hana was not well received after her dance moves and so forth that she did, and we loved it from a Western perspective. We loved interviewing Hana. Her English isn't by no means perfect. She's batting at about 60% in terms of English.
About the same as mine.
But she's batting at 100, at best, 120% in terms of enthusiasm.
Yeah,
she would just light up. She's almost like a Disney character, and she would love that compliment because she's obsessed with Disney. But she really got into trouble. Her management, and I know a person on her management, was tightening up whenever she was in contention, because they were encouraging her to do these small celebrations rather than the big stuff that we were all encouraging from, the LPGA side of things. So there's this, it's just the cultural differences there. And they love Inji Chun, they love So-Yeon, and so just trying to find that balance between how they adapt to Western tours, and it's not an easy task for them.
It's just a pity this is a footnote. The two things, the president and the racial undertones. It's a pity that they're a footnote to one of the major events of the year, which we should be celebrating the growth and the dominance of the game in that part of the world, the work ethic, the talent, their ability to stand up under pressure. Like, we should
increase
celebrating.
quality.
Of course. Of course, speak to Clayton about this a couple of weeks ago. I was talking about how much better the women's, how much better the depth of player is on the women's tour now than it was 25 years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Women's golf is growing exponentially, but we should, the headline should have been like similar to what it was on the Ladies European Tour a couple of weeks ago, back when a Thai girl, 14-year-old, won. She became the youngest ever winner of a professional event. Beat Lydia Ko's record, beat Brooke Henderson's record, and the bloke actually is also a 14-year-old Thai guy, so who holds the men's record. But these little, Choi was an iron shot away from being in real contention.
Go on.
I'm going to add another footnote from the LPGA, Andy, if you don't mind, because it wouldn't be an Inside the Ropes podcast if I didn't push off the fence here at some stage.
Of course not.
Among the emails and edicts from the LPGA Tour through the weekend, and I'd love to get Ali's perspective on this in a couple of minutes, is something they've done which is astounding to me on a broader scale than just what happens in a tournament. They've put the kibosh on racy clothes, basically. Apparently, it's come from within. But there's an edict now from the LPGA that says there will not be racy clothes. We will not allow...
What is that? What is racy? Do they define racy clothes?
Plunging necklines.
Yeah, and racerbacks, I think, gone. Yeah, so...
They're out, yep.
And the premise of what people have been saying about it is it's come from within the tour, like the actual membership. Some people within the membership have actually put their hand up and asked that this be the direction. The LPGA Tour does so many good things for so many women and golf generally in the world. It's so much more progressive in so many more respects than their male counterparts over there. Yeah. They are a great friend of Golf Australia and Golf in Australia that play a key role in the ISPS Handle Women's Australian Open. But they've just sunk the boots into what women's golf could be in the future with one quick, ill-founded email.
I can't believe it.
It's extraordinary. As soon as that happened, Christian Hamilton, who will get in here at some stage, he's partly Golf Victoria, partly Golf Australia, but he's the inclusion manager. He's going, oh my God, every time I'm going to see a girl at 14 years of age who's worrying about the ridiculously staid nature of golf clubs and what can I wear, and I've just been watching, and I'm not saying that she's part of this, but I've just been watching Michelle Wee, and it's really, really cool. Now, if
are they citing her as an example?
No, there's been no example cited. Okay, right. But I don't think you have to be, a rocket scientist to figure out who they're talking about. Shall we say that? Those outfits are now banned, and we've just taken a step into the let's turn young girls away from golf realm, and it makes me sick. I'm sorry to say that, LPGA.
I by no means really agree with it, but at the same time, again, from the TV side of things, it does actually make a difference from a broadcast perspective, because when they're wearing slightly revealing, like short skirts, there's a couple of girls, and we all know who they are. They wear, it's almost like Lululemon-esque kind of lengths. And when they're putting, you have to choose your angles wisely. So the director of whoever's doing the TV that week has to set up the shots, but they would be constantly changing the shots and not necessarily getting the best angles for the broadcast because they have to be conservative with what they show. So I have to acknowledge that side of things. If you're wearing a slightly plunging neckline, as they call it, then obviously a front-on shot when you're putting is not, or when you're hitting a shot, like you do the math on that one. Within reason, surely there's got to be.
You're a big fan of activewear, Andy. I know that from some of the.
In fact, I'm going to wear something next week.
Yeah. But that said, one of the other things that's gone by the wayside is leggings without shorts or skirts over the top. So, I don't know if anyone's actually walked down the street in the last decade, but, a lot of girls get around in leggings.
Honestly, this is the stuff that is... I take your point on board 100%, Al. I've got no issues with the challenges that might present to people who are in an OB van trying to, sort of put the right shot to line without offending anyone, the viewer or the athlete. But, you want to be progressive. You've got to be. If this game doesn't acknowledge the fact that Hayesy is bringing up, then it's not only standing still, it's going backwards. And this goes to the men's game as well. I'm not saying allow blokes to walk out on golf course with footy shorts and thongs. I'm not saying that at all, but this is one of the challenges the game faces in this day and age, and it's got to be better at addressing it.
Well, when was the last time you ever said, Jordan Spieth looked really nice on the third round of... It's something that is not part of the men's game. It is a part of the women's game. I can tell you, Paige McKenzie, who played on the LPGA, she's now a Golf Channel analyst. She does morning drive over there. She rocked up in... It was almost like a business shirt. It was like a men's untucked white shirt, and she wore it to the Founders Cup, I want to say maybe in 2011 it would have been. And she got photos taken of her. She got little pieces written about her, and it was about fashion. And fashion is something that comes into play far more on the women's side than it does on the men's side. So it is a part of the game, and they've got to be really careful with how they treat this, especially over the next couple of months if they're changing things around.
We've spoken about Ricky Fowler. I mean, it's at a different level, but that is all about fashion, and that's all about, bridging the gap between the staid old conservative approach and a touch of the skate look about the cap, and it's a different. Remember how much time we spent talking about his sort of high cut boots that he wore. This is, if it's just let it go. I mean, not everyone has to like it, but is it hurting anyone?
One of the words that's been bandied around, and I've always wanted to say this word on air, Andy. I've never ever had the opportunity to do so, but one of the words bandied around in this conversation is, I'm turning away from the camera, side boob.
Side boob.
Side boob. Now twice. We have a side boob count. Someone said we've got no... Why do we want to see side boob? Now, I've been to a lot of women's golf tournaments. I have never, ever, ever, ever once seen side boob.
Side boob?
Yeah.
What is this? The shirt's too revealing, and from the side on you're getting...
I mean, one of the things...
Please help me, Ellie.
I mean, without having the email in front of me, there were sections in there that clearly referred to the player banquets and the sponsor dinners on the Wednesday night.
Right, okay.
And usually on Wednesday nights. And so I think maybe it might have been angled slightly toward the golf course attire, because they were also told, like, some of the girls, and I can think of a couple of examples that literally turn up to a sponsor night in torn jeans, sneakers, and that's their own personal style, and you can't really... it's square peg, round hole if you go and put them in an evening gown. But, I do think that was more toward off-course kind of stuff.
But that takes out of the problem, as you mentioned before, the TV aspect of it, because, that's not where TV cameras are. We need to focus on what gets the next generation into play, and there's no more pressing thing in the game of golf than getting young women with golf sticks in their hands. Not number one.
Spot on. Other bits and bits, we're running way over time here, but I'm glad you brought it up, because I wouldn't have, but it's an important point that gets addressed, I reckon, for the long-term health of the game.
And we got Shark mincing around lakes naked.
Well, we've started with
Where's
Shark
his email?
nude, and we've got Norman nude at the start of the show, and we've got a bit of side boob at the end. What has happened to Inside the Ropes? It's all about the Open, but just last week, great to see Cam Percy have a really good finish over at the John Deere, jumped 10 spots on the money list, and it's probably getting to about that time of the year where we start to focus a little bit on the money list over there. He's up to 139, so we need him to... he's a good man, and we love him, and we'd like to see him get in that 125, so that's a great result for him. Andy Dote did what he did to get in to the Open Championship in Scotland, which was fantastic, and he made it a bit hard on 18 for himself, leaving that first putt about 4 feet short, but he made the next one, which was great. The finish to that tournament, I don't want to finish the show on a negative, but the end of that tournament when Callum Shinkwin, who I've never heard of, young English player, knocks his second shot pin high but left of the left trap on the par 5 18th, has to get up and down from about 30 metres, maybe not even that, in 3 to win the championship. Takes the direct line, hits the bank, drops down, still a straightforward putt up the bank, down the downhill to the pin. You're going to make 2-putt. He left his first putt about 6 feet short, and then left his putt to win short in the heart. And then he loses the playoff to Cabrera Bello, who is a superstar. The kid looked fantastic through the whole thing. Didn't look like it broke his heart, but I tell you what, it was painful watching. He's got it all ahead of him. He's only a young fella, and he's obviously got some game. But to watch him not win a tournament the way he did, that's hard. It is hard going.
We right off the top, we talked about even Tom Watson went through that on the last couple of holes. So it happens to everyone. Let's hope that he gets a chance to rectify it sooner in his career rather than later.
Spot on. And last bit of business before we get going, Hayesy, Golf Month. Give us the latest on that, will you?
Well, it's back in October, bigger and better than ever, Andy. It's probably the third incarnation of it in October this year. Last year we had almost 450 clubs and facilities around the country putting out fun social activities that welcome people of all ages and abilities to the game. As I've said in previous episodes, and I'll reiterate it here, if you're a member of a club or a facility or just a regular visitor, we implore you to go down to that club or facility and ask them if they've got something planned at their club for October, because it's really important that we get the next generation of members or just regular users of the facilities coming through. We'll update our listeners as we go along. But at the moment, the most important thing people can do is actually go down and rattle the manager's door at your club or facility and get them to get involved with Golf Month in October. And if you want to find out a bit more about what's going on, check it out at golfmonth.com.au.
That's it for Inside the Ropes. We're done. Ali, thanks for being part of it again.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Always good to have you on the show. Hayesy, we'll do it again next week.
Perfect, Andy.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.